the Senate gavels back in for another busy week of an exceedingly busy work period. There's a lot we must continue working on to lower costs for the American people, to strengthen health care and prescription drug costs, make sure they're lower, confirm highly qualified nominees, protect our fundamental rights, and fortify U.S. national security interests. None of this is easy, but we are moving ahead. In a few hours, the Senate will take another important step towards finally passing our bipartisan Chips and Innovation Bill by voting to invoke cloture. After more than a year of hard work on fixing U.S. chip supplies and boosting American scientific innovation, we're on the brink of closing the book, passing these critical investments into law. If cloture is invoked, members should plan to vote on final passage as early as tomorrow evening or Wednesday. When signed into law, the impacts of this bipartisan Chips and Innovation Bill will last years, if not decades. It will mean an increase in American jobs, increased manufacturing here at home, relief for our supply chains, and lower costs for the American people. Of course, we'll also preserve America's security interests. One of the most important struggles of this century will be the fight for global semiconductor supply. Sadly, America's lagging behind. A recent article from the Wall Street Journal revealed that the Chinese Communist Party is planning 31 major semiconductor fabs planned over the next few years in a bid to become the world's leader in new chip factories. American chip producers are working hard to match this output, but they're waiting for Congress to finish work on this bill. Tens of billions of dollars, countless good-paying jobs are at stake. For that reason, I'm glad we're close to pushing this bill over the goal line. Of course, there's a lot more to celebrate about this bill. The bipartisan science provisions, many of which I authored in partnership with Senator Young under the Endless Frontier Act more than 2 years ago. These provisions will unleash a new wave of American scientific innovation that will last and create millions of good-paying jobs for decades to come. We'll invest tens of billions to strengthen the National Science Foundation and plant seeds to cultivate the tech hubs of tomorrow in regions of the country that have tremendous potential but have long been overlooked. When we invest in science jobs, that will keep America number one. For decades, the United States was consistently the world leader in innovation and scientific research because we made the investments necessary to stay on top. And the result was millions and millions of good-paying jobs that made us the strongest economy on earth, the envy of the world. In the last decade, unfortunately, we have slipped from our place on the mountaintop. This bill will help us recapture that goal and that dream. The 21st century will be won or lost on the battleground of technological innovation. This is perhaps the most competitive era in human history. Will American workers, will American tech, will American ingenuity shape the world over the next 100 years in the same way that we've shaped it in the last 100? I believe we can. I believe we must. And when we pass this bill, I believe we will. Let's move forward today. Now on health care reforms and reconciliation. Senate Democrats continue our work to advance legislation that will lower costs and improve the lives of millions, tens of millions of American families. Last week, Democrats and Republicans held our bipartisan prescription drugs birdbath meetings with the parliamentarian. As a reminder, this important preliminary step will clear the way for passing our reforms through the reconciliation process. I want to thank Chairs Wyden, Sanders, and Murray, and the tireless work of their Finance, Budget, and Health Committee staffs for working around the clock on this important effort. If you want to fight inflation, then you should support passing this much-needed proposal on lowering prescription drug costs. Here's why. For the first time ever, we'll empower Medicare to negotiate the price of many expensive and vital prescription drugs, directly lowering what patients and taxpayers pay for these drugs. We will cap Americans' out-of-pocket drug expenses to $2,000 a year. Medicare will offer free vaccines and additional support for the low-income elderly. And crucially, will ensure that millions don't see their health care premiums skyrocket in the coming months. Let me say it again because it's key, and I say it to our colleagues across the aisle, our Republican colleagues. If you want to help Americans better afford their health care and medications, then you should support passing this bill. The United States citizens pay more on average for prescription drugs than any other people on earth, all for the exact same medicines that other countries use. The Democratic plan will finally help change that. Too many in this country find themselves in the confounding indignity of having to choose between getting their prescription drugs filled or putting food on the table for their families. Democrats' plan will finally help change that. And even as working Americans struggle to afford high-quality health care and medications, the nation's largest pharmaceutical companies face little accountability for jacking up prices on consumers. Again, Democrats' plan will help change that. For months, we've heard Republicans complain and complain about the need to lower costs for the American people. Well, Democrats will present the Senate with a proposal that will do precisely that in a very big way. What will they choose on the other side of the aisle? Will they work with us to lower the costs for prescription medications? Will they shore up our health care system and prevent devastating price hikes? Will they finally join us in holding Big Pharma accountable? This isn't complicated. Senators can vote to lower costs, or they can vote for higher costs. The American people will be watching. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.